The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today. So, Ethan Taylor, welcome to the journey.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. And well, let me explain a little bit about what the journey is about.
Okay.
And the journey is just a show in which we have guests of all types that come on. Individuals that may have struggled with either addiction or mental health, or struggled with something going on with with their career or business, and they had an opportunity because of either setbacks or struggles, had an opportunity to recreate themselves, and most importantly, learn things from those obstacles that were in their way. So when I know your story, I've known you for a while.
Yep.
I had the opportunity to coach you when you were at Rockford Christian. And,
yes.
And so I remember when you were playing football then, and at that time, and then over the last year or so, I've definitely watched the change that you've made, and I obviously know some of your family as well too. So Ethan, before we get too far into the bulk of your story, what do you do for fun? What does Ethan do for fun?
For the most part, like if I'm not working, I like to work out. So if I'm not like working out or running, probably find me on a couch watching football.
Okay, all right.
Like yesterday, Sunday, I went and did my run in the morning, came home, showered, and sat on my couch all day.
Okay, all right. Did you watch three different games?
Oh, well, see, I'm a big Detroit Lions fan, so I have to. Okay. I pay money, like, 'cause I'm like a diehard Lions fan, so I pay money to watch the Lions every week.
Okay.
And so I have NFL Sunday tickets, so I can watch 4 games at once.
Oh,
and so I sit there and I watch as many games. I just like watching football. Like that's my hobby,
Gotcha.
I guess.
So how'd you become a Detroit fan? How did that happen?
I don't know. It was a bad decision though. I guess like when I first got into football, we used to visit my grandparents, and they lived in Three Rivers, Michigan, near Kalamazoo. And so I just got like a Lions hat or something, or a shirt at like Walmart or something. My parents got me one.
Sure.
And like over time, as I fell in love with football, I like gravitated towards the Lions, and then somehow became like just live and die by every snap. And it's caused me a lot of pain. But
yeah. Well, and right now though they're 2-0, right? 3-0.
No, we're 1-0-1. So we're
1-0-1.
Technically undefeated.
Okay.
Technically. So.
Okay. Well, being actually now I'm probably more of just a football fan, but I have followed the Bears just because it's a long story with Caleb. I brought him to his first Bears game when he was in 5th grade because we were watching a running back. His last name was Wolf, and he played
Garrett
at
Wolf.
Garrett Wolf. So we were following him when he was at NIU, and then we started going to Bears games when he got picked up by the Bears, and we've just gone ever since.
Yes.
So, but Detroit's always been tough. I mean, they may not always, end up winning winning the big one, but
they're never very good. But they try their hardest, which is important.
Yeah, exactly. So as I mentioned earlier, you're from the Rockford area.
Yes.
And been here your whole life, right?
Yes, proud to be from Rockford. Love Rockford.
Nice. So. And you went to, now did you always go to Rockford Christian? Or Okay.
I was at Rockford Christian from pre-K 3 until graduation. So whatever that math works out to, 15 years, 14 years, something like that.
And then you have a brother Ethan, or not Ethan, but
Zach.
Zach, okay.
I have an older brother, Zach, who's 23, and then a younger brother, Gabe, who's 16, just turned 16.
Okay, gotcha. And then mom and dad, right?
Mom and dad.
Okay. And so, tell us a little bit about. Well, you're working right now. What do you do job wise?
I work with Food for Fuel. Do a lot of help in the kitchen and grab and goes and help coach the sprint groups.
Okay.
So I do a lot. I spend a lot of time trying to help out people who come to Food for Fuel and are trying to do something that I did because they've seen my story.
Okay.
They've been inspired by something that we've done. So I just try and do my best to help lead them on the right path.
Okay. Well, while you're talking, do a little bit of a what's Food for Fuel? Tell us a little bit about what Food for Fuel is.
Food for Fuel is it's a healthy prepackaged meal company. So we make meals, we portion them out correctly for you, and we sell them. You put them in your fridge, and then when you're ready to eat them, put them in the microwave for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then it's all ready to go. It's nutritionally dense. It's whole foods. So we figure if somebody comes in and even buys one, you're canceling out one meal that you might have gone through a drive-through.
Okay.
And so it's just all about making a health-conscious choice to eat healthier versus other options.
Okay. And how long have you been employed by Food for Fuel?
Employed, I've been probably I've done like little events here and there, but like being like actually on payroll probably about 8 months.
Okay. All right. So you've been with Jim and his organization, but for much longer than that.
Yeah, I've been with Jim since I started the weight loss thing, because he's really what nutrition side is. He really is what helped me figure out what I need to be eating. Even like I knew what I wasn't supposed to be eating, but he told me what was going to help me lose weight the best, healthiest way. He's also given me lots of opportunities just to go out and succeed in terms of physical activity. Like he's the one who set me up with Anytime Fitness.
Okay.
And Brent over there at Edgebrook. So he's helped me a lot.
Gotcha. So yeah, why don't you go ahead? I mean, I know right now that's a big part of your story has been a significant amount of weight loss over a fairly short period of time. So, and even though a lot of people who are listening may know some of that story, there may be some people that don't know that portion of the story. So why don't you kind of walk us through a little bit of that? When did that begin? Where were you at health wise? Where were you at weight wise? And tell us a little bit about how that all got started and what was leading up to that.
I'll take it back a little bit to like late 2017.
Okay.
Because I started January 2018 is when I started trying to lose all the weight. But back in October, November 2017, I was away at college and I was struggling really hard mentally. I had some pretty severe depression and anxiety. I had a back injury, which they were kind of linked, but it wasn't like back injury caused the depression, but it definitely didn't help.
Sure.
And I was away at college. I was unhappy. I was spending a lot of time doing things I shouldn't. I wasn't going to class because my back hurt so bad, so I pretty much just laid in bed unless I was going to go party with some friends. Okay. I couldn't like stand for more than like 5 minutes. I was just in a really, really bad spot, and so I guess I just kind of came to the realization, like, you know, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. And so I talked to my parents. I was like, I need to come home. And so I dropped out, came back home to Rockford. And then I spent the next few months just 2 days of physical therapy, 3 days at the chiropractor, just trying to get my back a little bit better. And then in January, I just was like, it's time to do this. It's now or never, you know. Okay. And so January 2018 was the start of it. And such an important date to me, so I'll always remember that. But I started just when I first started, my back wasn't the best, so I still couldn't do a whole lot. So I just started with diet, because that's the most important thing. You can work as hard as you want. You're not going to be able to outwork a bad diet. It's not going to happen. I've tried to several weeks during my journey, and I fail every time, because as much as I work out or whatever, I can't outwork, you know, a double cheeseburger or something. It's always going to affect me.
Sure.
But so just over the next 18 months until June of 2019, I just spent as much time as I could eating the right foods, working out, being proactive, just learning everything I could about what I needed to do to be successful at losing the weight. And so on January 16th, I reached my goal of 184 pounds lost, because I was like, I want to get down to 185, because I think that'd be cool. And then at some point I realized that if I lost 184 pounds, got down to 184, I'd cut myself in half. Okay. So I was like, all right, gotta go the extra pound, right? Okay. And so I was lucky enough to do that right before my 21st birthday, so it was kind of a cool little present for myself. Okay. And yeah, so were you at your heaviest right before you started? Yes.
That was at your heaviest?
I weighed 368 pounds when I started.
So 368. And you're what, 6 foot?
Yeah. I wish I was 5'9".
Yeah.
I'm like 5'6", so I'm not. I was fairly athletic growing up, so like I wasn't as bad. It didn't look as like unproportionally pleasing, or I don't even know the right words, but it didn't look as bad as it could have, because I was always athletic. I had lots of muscle just from playing football and doing sports all my life, but I was a pretty hefty little child.
Yeah. So I remember when you were playing, I mean, because you were for your size, you were quick and you had good feet. It was just that you were like a fire hydrant. I mean, you were just with feet,
like,
and you were thick. quick, and that was probably more. But you're right. It wasn't like a sloppy, it wasn't that,
Because I always lifted. I was always in football shape for the most part, and in like high school, I only weighed but like 300-ish pounds, somewhere in that range. So I gained a lot when I went away to college, but yeah, no, I was just, I don't know, I looked like a barn kind of, like,
sure.
just about short or wider than I was tall. So sure. I guess, but
sure. So bring us back a little bit farther. So growing up, always a bigger kid?
Yeah, I was always probably since like second grade. I was probably the biggest kid in my grade. Okay. I just was always big. I never really really didn't bother me like mentally, or I didn't really notice it till probably about middle school.
Okay.
Because that's when other kids start to notice the same things, and you kind of realize, you become self-aware. You're like, okay, well, I am the biggest kid here.
Okay.
And I always hear about how bad it is to be overweight, and like from teachers, parents, friends, you always hear it, and you're like, well, I mean, I know you're not trying to make it sound like you're talking directly at me, but I know that you are,
right,
type deal. But
in family wise, I mean, your family, from when I've met them, it doesn't necessarily seem like individuals that are extremely overweight or anything like that. So how was that from a family standpoint?
I mean, I was obviously the biggest kid in my family too, but like it just like nothing seemed unnormal, because when you grow up, like my parents, like I would never blame my parents for letting me get to that point, because a lot of it was me going out to eat, a lot of it was me making bad decisions. But like, it's tough when I was growing up. My mom worked third shift, my dad worked first shift, so my mom would pick us up, then have to go to bed so she could sleep, so she could work overnight, and my dad would come home and he'd be dead tired because he worked material handling, so he was on his feet busting his butt all day. Mm-hmm. And so it was like nobody really wanted to cook, and I wouldn't want to cook either, so I don't blame them for that. So sure. A lot of times it was easier to just be like, yeah, here's a Happy Meal or whatever.
So it was maybe more of that part of it was the beginning of it, and so I remember for me, having worked with other individuals, when you have to eat, you start eating whole foods, right?
Yeah.
We didn't call it that back then, mm-hmm. but there was an element with different diets that I did growing up that it was like punishment. Like if I was going on eating certain foods, then it was as a result of being punishment because I was fat, and so and even though I was fortunate that I had a taste for whole foods, and I preferred the taste of it because I like the texture, I like different things. There was something in my head that once I was supposed to eat it or had to eat it, then there was this, initially when I was younger, a resistance to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I get like the same way it's the like food is reward thing too. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a mentality thing that like people in America and people in other countries have, where it's like, you go on a diet, it's a bad thing, you have to eat all these healthy foods, and you're like, okay, man, this stinks, but then like, I lost 20 pounds, I'm gonna reward myself with a donut or whatever, right. And so it's like, it's a mentality thing that pretty much everyone has, where it's like, I'd rather eat this than chicken and brown rice and broccoli. But once you realize how important food is to everything, it's kind of like, it makes it easier. Yeah. And you find what you like. I eat the same thing every day pretty much.
I relate to that.
Yeah, I'm a creature of habit, so I like what I like and I eat it. So
sure. So growing up, I just recently watched a video that was put out, and you said that things started changing in middle school, and specifically started changing socially. And I think you're right on. As a counselor, we know that that's when a lot of times the social mirror starts getting revealed back to us about what's, where do we fit in, how do we fit into the social structure of our school or whatever it is. What was it like? when all of a sudden you realized through other people's comments and maybe even your own perception, what was that? What was that like?
I mean, it was a tough realization because, like you said, in middle school, that's when people really start, like, you start gravitating towards groups of people. Because I remember in 6th grade, like, I had a party at my house at the end of the year, and I invited the whole class, everyone in my grade, and probably 75% of the people came, whether we were good friends or not, just because I guess it was kind of like the last time before everyone started realizing, like, hey, we don't really have anything in common, so might as well just go our separate ways and whatnot. But, like, when you start to see, like, groups form and you realize that, you know, I can't really, like, hang out with the athletic kids as much because they're more active than I am, but I'm not really in tune with kids who are smarter because I wasn't the smartest kid, and I don't really have any other interests besides sports. And so you just start to see, like, groups form, and you're not really sure, like, what to do because it's just like I don't fit in anywhere particular. Like, I have certain things I can apply to certain groups, but, like, I don't have, like, a group to, like, call home per se.
Right. And at that time, if you're being less active with your friends and there's this uncertainty going on and food is this reward, I imagine without even being conscious of it, it just started naturally perpetuating itself.
Yeah, it's really easy just like when you're like feeling like sad or confused or whatnot, just be like, you know what, I'm just going to eat this because I know it'll make me feel better because, you know, it tastes good or whatnot. But yeah, it's just tough because like when you replace everything is replaceable. So like if I replace going to the gym with my friends because I know that I'm not as fit as them with going out to get something to eat because I feel bad about not being able to go to the gym with my friends, it just kind of spirals.
Right. And I know for me, you talked about the reward piece of food that on a short-term basis. That was something that I know after having, you know, wrestled for so many years, and when I was competing in bodybuilding, we would get off after a show.
Yeah.
I could eat whatever I wanted. And that was sometimes hard because now I went from the super rigidness of it, and then I went to no structure at all, and there'd be a lot of just eating just to eat.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the same thing with football. Like when I was playing football in high school, like I could eat more food because I knew that I was burning more calories throughout the day because you go to practice every day, especially in the early season. It's really hot, you're sweating a lot, but then continuing to eat the same way, like after games, I knew I used to just stop somewhere on my way home and get something to eat because when you get done with the game, it's almost 10 o'clock. I don't live 20 minutes away, so I don't get home till probably 11 o'clock at night. I'm not going to want to go home and make something, so it's just easy to go grab something. And, you know, then when football season ends and you continue to do stuff like that, it just kind of adds up over time, and then you graduate high school and you go away to college with these bad eating habits, and you don't really, like, you can diet, but, like, diet's kind of a bad term because it's something, diet is seen as, like,
restriction.
Well, restriction, but I was also going to say it's like a timed thing. So you're like, I'm going to diet for like 4 weeks. Yeah. And so like after the 4 weeks is up, what then? Like then you're back to eating bad. So it's kind of just something you kind of got to learn.
Yeah. No, I agree. In turning into a healthy lifestyle versus a certain amount of time is for me was a big switch.
Yeah.
So pre-college, before you go off to college, and maybe even you talked about there was some depression going on.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's two different types of depression, but this a lot of times they're interwoven. Sometimes there's a chemical imbalance that we may be genetically born with, and sometimes it may be as a result of substance abuse or activity abuse type of thing.
Yeah.
And other times it has to do with more of a melancholy or a sadness or as you said, a lostness, not knowing where do I fit in. For you, when you think back to that time period in high school maybe, or pre-college or in college, when you say depression, what do you mean?
I definitely think, well, I don't know for sure. I've done like the test and stuff and whatnot, the little exams they give you. And, you know, I think that my depression was genetic because I have lots of family who struggles with it.
Okay.
And it's not something that has gone away completely. completely. Like I still have days or weeks where I struggle really bad with my depression now, even though I've lost all the weight. So, but just thinking back to high school, it was basically go to school, go to practice if I had it, come home, just sit there because I didn't want to do anything really. And it's always tough to get up and go to school when you don't want to. I'd just rather lay in bed all day. Rockford Christian had a policy where you could miss 12 days. That was the max. I missed 12 days every semester except for football season. So, but after football season got over in mid-October, I missed tons of class. Because I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to see people. I just kind of wanted to stay home and do my own thing.
So a big part for your depression was it would affect your motivation. It would affect that drive piece of it. It would then, because of that, there was low energy, and then it was easier to isolate.
Yeah.
Easier just to be by yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. And that perpetuated into school.
Yes.
Then, now, where'd you go to school? College?
I went to McMurray College, which it's about 30 minutes west of Springfield. It's a really small school, but
okay. And what made you pick that school?
I was somehow, I don't know, I still don't know how this happened, because I really wasn't a bad student in high school, but I wasn't a stellar student by any means, but I ended up getting a scholarship there at an academic one, and my family's never been one who's been pick whatever college you want, we'll pay for it. It's kind of been this is a huge decision for not only you, but us as a family. And so I ended up going down there and visiting, and it didn't seem too bad, and so I ended up picking it because I knew that I had a decent chunk of change that I wouldn't have to pay for college, and so that's why I picked there, because I visited there in Illinois State, and those were my two choices, and I chose that one instead.
And them being able to pay for some of it obviously is a huge incentive.
Yes, yeah, because if I only have to pay $5,000 a year to go to one school, or if I have to take out student loans and go into huge debt and pay $25,000-$30,000 a year to go to school, it's big. People say money's not important, but it really is. And so it definitely sways your decision. I think I made the right choice, even though I struggled a lot, because McMurray was a small school, so I was able to meet people quickly and become friends with people. And at Illinois State, I don't know if I would have been able to do the same thing with 20,000-30,000 people.
Right.
It might have been sensory overload, and I might have ended up retroactively becoming more lonely and depressed than I would have if I had not gone to McMurray.
So tell us, now you were at McMurray one semester, or?
I was there for 2 semesters. I was there for my freshman year and then half of the beginning of my sophomore year, so 2.5 semesters.
Okay, so you started your third semester before. Okay. And what was that first year like? You're away at school for the first time. You're away from home.
Yeah.
Right? And you're a decent amount away. So what was that like, your first year?
It was tough at first, especially because I remember we moved in the weekend before. Is it Labor Day? Is the one we just had, right? Yeah. Okay, Labor Day. And so the weekend of Labor Day, I came home. It was one weekend to school, and I just came home because we had a 3-day weekend, and it's 3 hours away. So I was like, all right, I'll just come home, see my family, tell them about my first week of college. And so I remember going home, and I was about to leave, and I just remember having a panic attack because I didn't want to go back. It was tough. I was hyperventilating. I was freaking out in my room, and I didn't really I'm one of those people who didn't really tell anyone that I was having issues, but and I just you got to go back. You've already paid for part of it. Go back. Okay. So I went back, and then the first couple months, just getting to know new people. You don't really I knew my roommate vaguely, kind of just from little talking and stuff, but over time I've met some of my best friends there. So I did have really good friends, and I had a lot of fun, but I also made a lot of bad decisions.
Okay. But then that third semester, it was different.
Yeah.
And what was different?
Well, I struggled with the depression and anxiety and the not wanting to be there as much my whole freshman year. Okay. But then coming back with a back injury and kind of just not being able to do really much of anything.
And how do you think the injury happened?
I was playing with my dog, and she's a big old girl, and I just picked her up, and I felt a pop in my back, and I was like, oh, it's probably just a pulled muscle. It'll be fine. I went and had it looked at, and they're like, yeah, we don't see anything. And it wasn't too bad when it first happened, but then over time, it just got to the point where like I was having severe like sciatica attacks, and so like I couldn't lay on one side for more than like 5 minutes. I couldn't stand up for more than 5 minutes. I couldn't walk for more than 5 minutes. I was having like, I remember coming home one weekend and I was laying on my mom's bed after a shower because I just couldn't really do much, and I was sore from having to stand up in the shower because of my back was hurting. And I just got like the worst sciatic nerve attack I've ever had, and it was like shooting down. My legs hurt so bad, and I just didn't know what to do. I was like screaming on the bed because it hurt so bad. It's just, I don't know. It's just kind of a freak, kind of like little something you wouldn't think about.
Of how it happened, sure.
Lift with your knees, not your back, that kind of deal. But
right. And I've had back injuries where I had a herniated disc between the S1 and L5, and that was some of the worst pain for the longest period of time that I had ever experienced.
Yeah, because this is like, my back's not fully fixed. I'd say it's probably about 75% of what it could be, because I still have days where I'm like, man, my back's just killing me. It's always my low back and my hips, and I'm like, man, I can't really, like, there's not like a whole lot that like, I mean, I'm trying to think about what I want to say. Like, it's obviously like, I put it in perspective, and I was like, okay, like at one point you couldn't do literally anything.
Right.
So a day where you can't do as much as you'd like is a lot better than that.
Right. So. But it is hard to keep in mind, because at least for me, pain is not. I have a hard time keeping it in relative standpoint.
Yeah.
Because when I'm distracted because of the pain, it seems like that's the worst. At that moment. So, you said football has been a part of your life, and you've enjoyed football the whole time.
Yep.
Any particular individual that you looked up to, or you wanted to aspire to, or just like their story as you were growing up?
I don't know. It was tough. Just kind of like when I got into football, it was from watching highlights of Barry Sanders on YouTube. So he was always my favorite player.
Sure,
and little chubby Ethan, when he was in like elementary school, would always go to football and be like, I'm a running back. I got this. Like, because I was like, that's what I wanted to be. And I didn't really grasp the whole, you got to be fast to be a running back type thing. But,
sure.
I always looked up to Barry Sanders, and then just really like anybody who did stuff to like help either like the homeless or help just like better their own communities, because that's something that I've always really been drawn to, is people who like are proud of where they come from and want to make sure that it's the best place to live as possible.
Gotcha. So it was a combination. One is individuals who would give back to the community and give back via their position, and then watching how Barry Sanders played.
Yeah.
Right. And what was it about how Barry Sanders played and the stories you heard about him? What was it about, besides the fact that he was amazing? I mean, what else about how he played that seemed to be inspiring?
It's just like you wouldn't expect it from somebody. He's like 5'8", he wasn't always the fastest player on the field. It's just like that he kind of was like, I did what I did, and I made the most out of a situation, and I became super successful. So it's kind of just that, and the fact that he didn't really let people say like, hey, you're too short, hey, you're not fast enough. He was just like, no, I'll show you what I can do. Okay. And obviously it worked out well for him.
Yeah, very much so. And I think he was from Oklahoma, was it?
Yeah, I think he was from Oklahoma. Yeah. Yeah, because I remember I've seen videos on him, and his dad was a big Sooners fan and didn't want him to go to Oklahoma State.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And so coming back into your story, so it's January of 2018. Did you start working out with Jim at that time? Who did you start working out with in January?
At first, it was like the first couple weeks, it was literally just fixing my diet. Because when you're as big as I was, it was like, hey, you're eating really bad food. Stop. And so I stopped doing that. I started eating a mix of food for fuel and then some other things at home. But mostly I ate the food for fuel because it was easy and it was a good basis to try and fix my diet off of.
It was like that perfect fit. Instead of fast food, you could just replace it just with this choice instead of that choice.
It was a lot easier time-wise, too, because I had started going back to school and stuff, and I wanted to be working out. So it was really convenient to be like, okay, all I have to do is go home and put something in the microwave for 2 minutes, and it'll be good for me.
Right.
But when I did start working out, my grandpa actually just kind of, he offered offered to help pay for a gym membership up at North Point because he knew that because he's had back issues too. And he's like, go walk in the water, it'll be good for you. And I ended up, so I went with him for the first couple months, and I didn't like the water walking. It actually hurt my back more. So I would go and I'd ride the bike for like 30 minutes, sit in the sauna, do things that were low impact, just to try and make sure that, you know, I wasn't hurting my back more, but I was still trying to be active.
Right.
And so that was the first couple months, and then Jim set me up with Brent over at Anytime Fitness, and that's when it really took off.
Okay.
It was like March is when I joined Anytime Fitness.
March of 18.
Yep.
And so what was different about that? Because up until this point, I mean, you knew stuff back from Rockford Christian when you lifted weights and knew what to do and different, but then you go to Anytime Fitness, Brent's a trainer, he has other trainers there. What was different?
You know, I used to go to like bigger gyms like the Y, Peak, North Point, and so going to Anytime Fitness, it's a much smaller thing. Everybody knows everybody, so it felt almost like a home because you go in and the trainers who work there, the people who go there to work out know who you are, you know who they are, and so it's easier to walk in and see somebody and just have a conversation instead of, you know, well, I'm here with 300 other people right now, just trying to be able to use a bike, you know, and so I feel like just that aspect of it, and the fact that they were just so welcoming and willing to, you know, take a chance on me and let me come in and do what I could to better myself and help me when I needed it. I think those were the two main things that really made it easier.
So a sense of community and in this belief or perception that they were believing in you.
Yeah.
And okay, now did they bring you through workouts, or did they set you up on workouts, or just provide the space?
I've been very blessed throughout this to kind of just be handed some opportunities, and that's part of why I think I've been so successful, is I was handed opportunities, so I felt like I couldn't abuse the opportunities. Like, I need to capitalize on opportunities I'm given. That's a big thing for me. If somebody's going to go out and put their neck on the line for me, I'm not going to go out and give half-hearted effort or whatnot. And so I was very lucky, and Brent offered to give me the first few months. I could meet with a trainer once a week on Anytime Fitness's dime, just because he's like, you know, I think you can be successful, and I want to be a part of that, and I want to help you. And so you can meet with the trainer I started meeting with was Caleb. He's like, you meet with him once a week. He'll put you through a workout, kind of give you some tips until you get back on your feet and whatnot. And so I was very, very blessed to have that opportunity. And, you know, I'm just forever grateful for opportunities like that.
Sure. Okay. And when did you, because there is this thing about when you start losing weight and you see the numbers on the scale start moving in the direction you want them to move, right? There's something about that is reinforcing, it's validating, it's affirming, and then there's an intoxication that happens sometimes, right? So when did you notice that consistently going in the direction you wanted?
I mean, it started when you're, like I said, when you're really big and you just have to fix your diet, it'll come off really quickly to start. So, like, I think the first month I only worked out probably 3 times a week, and I only worked out the last 2 weeks, so like 6 times, 8 times, somewhere in that range. And I lost like 15 pounds. So 15 pounds. Yeah, in the first month. So you're like, okay, not bad, you know, but like being somebody who had been on several, probably 20 diets throughout their life, I was like, all right, 15 pounds, that's pretty good. We'll keep this going. You know, second month, lost 12 pounds. So it's like, all right, I'm almost down 30. And so then I think when it really started to hit me that like this time I'm really going to be able to do it was probably when I got under 300 pounds, because I was like, I haven't been here probably since I was a freshman in high school. Okay. So it's like, this is the lightest I've been in 6 years. So
you're in the 200s.
Yeah. And so when I got down, I saw I think it was 297, because I think I was at 301 and I lost 4 pounds. I saw 297. I was like, all right, you know what? Okay. Maybe I can do this. Okay. So, okay. Because it was always like, I think I can, but then like when you see like real, like kind of insane kind of like numbers, like, oh, hey, I've lost 60, 68 pounds, 70 pounds. It's like, okay, you know what? Like this isn't something that is temporary. Like I can really, really push myself and do something big.
And at what point did it become the goal to get down to 185?
From the start, I had that goal.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
like
really?
my goal was to like lose that much weight, but it didn't really become something that I really pushed for until probably I lost the first 100 pounds.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, because like I always try and break it down. This is what I tell people when they start is like you can have a big goal. Like the big goal was 184 pounds, but you need to have small goals. You need to be like, I want to lose 10 pounds this month. I want to lose 2 pounds this week. Because if you just look at the long-term goal instead of just like daily, weekly, monthly goals, it's going to seem so much more daunting.
Sure. Yeah.
Because like I could be like, I want to lose 184 pounds, and I lose 4 pounds. I'm like, cool, 180 to go. That's not like that's not encouraging, really.
Right.
But if you're like, okay, I want to lose 12 pounds this month. All right, I lost 4 pounds this week. Cool, 25. Or wait, that's bad math. 33% of the way there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's easier when you break it down into small goals.
Right.
So that's what I tried to do as much as possible.
And so for you, that was another part of this formula of continue moving in that direction was helpful to get validation with small goals.
Small goals, yes.
Okay.
Because, not everything, like there's a thing called non-scale victories, and those are fun too, like when you go down a shirt size or a loop on your belt. But, just kind of, because it's really hard when you're losing weight to not like kind of let your life revolve around what the scale says, especially when you're doing like massive amount of weight. So I always just tried to, as much as possible. It didn't really work all the time because there were a lot of weeks where I was like glued to the scale. Like I weighed myself like 2-3 times a day, which isn't good for my mental state. But it's just trying to not really focus on the scale as much as like how you feel physically or mentally.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, about how you started feeling physically different and how you started feeling mentally different. Because you're right, it isn't just about what the scale says.
Yeah.
Because when you're working out, the scale, at some point, the scale can start being deceptive.
Yes.
Because of muscle weight and because of water weight, all these different variables. But so when did you start seeing a shift from a mental and how you physically felt, how you mentally and emotionally felt?
Physically, I probably started seeing the change after the first 30-40 pounds when the pressure on my back probably came a little bit less tight, and so I was able to do a little bit more. I went from just being able to ride the bike to being able to walk for 30 minutes, which was big because I used to just like I could not do anything besides the bike and then go home, shower, and sit down. And so I was able to walk, and so just like doing that, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna try and jog, I'm gonna try and do the stairs, and then you incorporate lifting. So just like every day, like I was always trying to add something in, whether it was just like a minute of cardio or going to lift a couple weights, just adding stuff in to kind of strengthen myself. And so being able to see those physical changes was really cool because I knew that, it could only get better from here because I had all the doctors like lose the weight, it'll help your back, lose the weight, it'll help your back. And, that's not the answer I was looking for. I was looking for here, take this, here, try this. It was never, because everyone always told me lose the weight. Like I was so sick of hearing that.
Right.
And even though it was probably true to an extent, it was kind of tough to hear. And so just physically, like being able to do something different every day or every week was really, really cool. Mentally, I probably started seeing it like right away because just like how your brain reacts to working out and the endorphins it releases. And so, like I said earlier, like my depression isn't perfect. It's still not perfect. Like I still struggle with it, but it's a lot better than waking up, being depressed all day, going to bed. Like I would much rather I'd rather not have it at all, obviously.
Sure,
but
right.
I'd rather have it once every few weeks or a couple days in a month versus every day.
Right.
And now that like I'm so physically active, I have things I can go do to kind of distract myself. Like I could go for a run, I could go lift, I could go talk to one of the gyms I know and try and get into a group workout to try and feel that sense of team or group atmosphere. So there's a lot of different things I can do now that I couldn't do when I was really big.
So I think that's a great point. I want to make sure that that we really stress it is because it is part of that lifestyle. It's having those choices that when that cloud of depression comes back, that now you have choices.
Yeah.
Community is important to you.
Very
Obviously,
important,
being able to physically have choices so that you can change your chemistry based upon working out. So if you go for a run, you go have a hard workout, you're chemically going to be different after that workout's over.
Yeah.
And so you're able to do some therapy, utilizing strategic tools to manage your depression versus your depression controlling you.
Yeah, it's just kind of like being able to, like I said, go out and like lift and then come home and be like, okay, I did something active, it helped. I was able to just like kind of distract myself from what bad thoughts I was having and replace those thoughts with a sense of accomplishment or a sense of community versus just like sitting there and staring at my ceiling, which is why I just used to lay there and look at the ceiling and just think and that was never healthy. That wasn't a good option. I knew it wasn't, but I didn't really have the option to go work out or do something like that. So it's just like replacing, when you're in a bad spot, just replacing that with, the endorphins from working out or the sense of community. It's really, really something I'd stress to people.
And again, going back to the beginning of your story, in not only the end of 17, but the beginning, January of 18, it was literally just moving in that direction.
Yep.
In your case, like for all of us, but it was even more emphasized, literally one step at a time.
Yeah.
Your back couldn't handle more than that.
Yeah.
Physically, you weren't in a shape to be able to do more. But it was that slow progress allowed you to have a sustainable model versus trying to sprint.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like something I always tell people, progress, not perfection. So it's not like one day it's not like, hey, I'm going to lose weight, so I'm going to go run a marathon. It's, hey, I'm going to lose weight, so I'm going to eat one meal better. I'm going to replace one bad meal with one good meal today, and I'm going to go walk for 5 minutes. And then, next week I'm going to replace 2 bad meals. I'm going to go walk for 10 minutes. And it's just always adding on to things until you get to a point where it's a sustainable thing. It's just you can't just jump full. You can't jump out of a plane without a parachute. You have to take baby steps. You got to learn how to put the parachute on. Then you have to go do some test jumps like onto a trampoline. Then you got to build up. You got to feel what it's like to be in the airplane, and then you can jump out of the airplane with your parachute. It's kind of just progressing to that point.
And I think that's a huge key. If we're looking at changing lifestyle, it is about movement, but there's about some strategy.
Yes.
And because, and this is where I want to ask you about this, is our perception always gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
So when you, because you're 21 now, right?
Yes.
When you think back, and now at 21, and you look back on, regardless if it was when you were at your heaviest or just during that time period, pre-working out, pre-eating the way you're eating now, if you look and think about what was your mindset? How did Ethan think about Ethan? How did Ethan think about the world?
Oh, it wasn't good. I hated myself. Don't know if I was really I was mad at the world, or if I thought things weren't fair. Like why did I have to be so big? Why did I have to be so depressed? Why did I have to be, always so lonely and whatnot? And so back then, my mentality really was like, I was just kind of, I was just sad and angry and all this all the time. And, I didn't really tell people because I already felt like I was a burden enough with my back injury. So I didn't want to be like, hey, I have a back injury. Also, I'm severely depressed. So it was kind of just like something I kept to myself. But yeah, no, I didn't really like anything. Like everything, I was always doom and gloom about it. I didn't really have a optimistic viewpoint on a lot of things. It was really pessimistic. And so just like looking back and seeing how I view things now, it's kind of really a 180.
And some of the things I remember, you may not obviously it's hard for you to remember this,
Yeah.
but I remember coaching you. You played defensive lineman,
Yeah.
and I remember even, we had you at nose guard, right?
Yeah.
And in other times, other positions, and because you were quick, and because there was a level of tenacity that you had, even when you were your heaviest. I mean, you were quick, but there was still, because of the weight, there was a lack of mobility.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't. Outside of running sprints, outside of certain conditioning things, I still have a perception in my mind that you tried. You put forth the effort, unlike some of the other students who didn't.
Yeah.
And there was this element that you wanted to be part of the team, and you were funny, right? I mean,
Tried my best, at least.
Yeah, and so I didn't say your jokes were good, but I'm just saying no, I'm just joking.
Sound like my family now.
Yeah. But what was the humor part? Because what was the humor part? I mean, obviously you have a good sense of humor in general, but people didn't know you were sad. They would just thought you were jolly. You were.
I think
funny.
it kind of falls into kind of like almost a stereotype, like the fat kid is the funny kid or whatnot.
Okay.
And it's kind of like you do that to try and, because like I said, I didn't like when people knew if I was sad or upset. So I just tried to mask it by always laughing, poking jokes, doing stuff like that. And, I always thought I was funny, despite what like my family and my girlfriend might tell me. I still think I'm funny, but it was just kind of like, if I can kind of distract attention away from myself by trying to make a joke, it'd be a lot better than people like actually seeing that I'm struggling.
Yeah. A lot of times we talk about vulnerability.
Yeah.
And to be vulnerable. But now, because of the weight loss, obviously that's the big thing, but then also because of other things that you're doing, you're putting yourself out there. Well, one, we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
There's a vulnerability to that. What's through this journey of transforming yourself, through this journey of recreating yourself, how do you see yourself? How are you beginning? That's a better way. How are you beginning to see yourself now?
I see myself a lot better. I see myself as somebody who, is resilient, who came from a dark place to make it here. I see myself as somebody who's just really done everything he can to set himself up for success. And I view myself as somebody who, that I enjoy more often than not. I like who I am. I like what I've done. I like where I'm at and what I've been able to do, not only for myself, but for others. And so it's just like going from like hating myself all the time to being able to say like, hey, you know what? I like myself now. Like I enjoy who I am. I think that I'm a decent enough person, and I really think that I'm doing some good things. So it's kind of cool to see how far I've come.
Earlier when you were talking about before you started this leg of the journey, it sounded like some of the questions and some of the comments you were made, you were upset because things out here were causing you to be this way, and somewhere along the line it shifted. Instead of the outside world or some other thing causing this to happen, regardless if it's genetics, if it's God, if it's whatever, now you're saying, well, this is what Ethan can do with this. This is who Ethan is. So it's an internal thing versus it being an external thing. Yes. So tell anything to add to that?
I think one of the biggest things for the whole journey, mental and physical, was self-realization. Like I realized that I was doing things that weren't going to help my depression, that weren't going to help my weight. I realized what I was doing to myself was not healthy mentally or physically. And so once you kind of realize that and you take like a backseat perspective and see things from a different viewpoint, you kind of realize, hey, like all I gotta do is change some things and I could make drastic changes to myself, even if it's little things like trying to create a schedule every day. So I'm not like, when I dropped out of college, I would sleep until 2 o'clock, go to therapy at or physical therapy at 3:30, and then I'd come home, play Xbox or whatnot, sit on my couch until 2-3 in the morning, wake up, go to bed, do the same thing. So like putting yourself to like a schedule and small stuff like that, like building habits that will lead to me being successful in the whole journey.
Well, I think that's key for individuals who've had success. They've set up structure, right?
Yeah.
They set up milestones in which to and put together different tools so that they can then start having a sense of power over their own choices.
Yeah.
May not be able to control outside things. May not be able to control if the wave of depression comes.
Yeah.
But you have some choices if it does happen.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know when my depression will hit me or when I'll have a bad day, but I know that I'm a lot more equipped to handle it now than I would have been 2 years ago.
Sure.
Like now I can deal with it. I can take my lumps and move on, as opposed to where if it hit me 2 years ago, it'd be like, all right, well, buckle in, folks. This is going to be a bumpy ride.
Sure. So, I think you said earlier you have a girlfriend?
I do.
Okay. So, what's her first name and how long?
Her name's Hannah, and we've been dating for about 4 months, almost 4 months, coming up on 4 months.
Okay. So now that's another element of having another relation, or another type of relationship, and how to navigate and allow that to grow. How's that been?
It's been really good. We've had a lot of fun. I really enjoy who she is. She's a great person. She's very kind, loving, funny, and I don't know. I'm happy that I found her and that she puts up with my dumb self, I guess. I don't want to say any vulgar language, but puts up with me because I'm kind of a lot to handle. Especially, she's so patient because I have such like a hectic schedule.
Right.
Because like I wake up and sometimes I have to go to work like 7 to 10. I got class 10:30 to 1:15. Then I got to go back to work. Then I have to go to a workout. I have to do my own workout. So I have such like a hectic schedule that's always changing, and she's so patient about it. And she's like, "No, it's fine. We can talk when you have time. Do your thing." And so that's another thing that I really, really appreciate.
Nice. So how did you and Hannah meet? How did that?
The internet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
really? Okay.
2019 relationships.
Well, I've heard. Obviously, I've heard when it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
But I have more than a handful of stories of how it does go well, and it's tough. Where you're going to meet people if it's not that.
And I'm still socially anxious sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I go to school, at this point, like I've delayed myself so much with school. Like I'm basically a freshman going into my 4th year of college because I just messed around too much my first 2 years and then didn't really apply myself the 3rd year. So it's like at this point, I'm not going to like make friends. Like I know that sounds bad. I'm going because I need to learn. Like I need to get through college.
Sure.
And so at this point, I'm not going to be like a social butterfly. I'm going because like I need to finish school because I can't keep paying money and then having no return on my investment. So.
Right, exactly. Well, I heard we talked earlier. You have another new goal or milestone that you are you're training for right now, and you're ready. You're about less than a month out.
Less than a month. It was a month yesterday. So
tell us a little bit about that. What the goal is, or what the plan is, and what you've been training for.
I've been training to run the 2019 Chicago Marathon, which is I've been running for less than a year. Like seriously, like I did a 5K or a couple of them, and then me and Zach were like, "Hey," I was like, "Hey Zach, you want to do a half marathon? You want to train for it and see how it goes?" He goes, "Yeah, sure," because Zach for the most part will just go along with me as long as he's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And so we did the half marathon in Schaumburg in May, and I was like, this wasn't terrible. I had fun. I felt pretty good afterwards. I was like, maybe I'll look around and see what types of charities I can run for, because I'm not one of those people who's going to be paid $200 to go run in a race. I'm not going to do that. But if I can go raise money for a charity that I think is good and does good work, then I'll do that, and I'll put myself through the hell of running 30-ish miles a week. And so I found a really cool charity that deals with childhood obesity and prevents or helps put programs in schools and stuff. I was like, this coincides with stuff I'm trying to do in Rockford, but at more of like a national scale. And so I was like, all right, this is something that I like truly am passionate about and believe in. So I messaged the person who runs it, and we did some talking, and I signed up through them. And so I've just been training and trying to fundraise and doing all I can to make sure that my legs stay attached till October 14th. After the 13th, they can fall off. It's fine.
And have never ran anything even near that. I think 5K is probably the longest I've ever run. So what's that like? I think you told me that you know this coming week the schedule is that you're going to be running the 20 miles, which is the longest you've run, right?
Yep.
So what's that like? The element of getting, at some point, right? You're thinking, and then you got to, unless you really want to torture yourself, you got to figure out how to shut that off and get into a zone. Right?
Running is it's more mental than it is physical, because I used to take the approach earlier in training for this when I wasn't having as good runs and I was struggling a little bit with some cramping. It was like, I don't want to go do this, I don't want to go run, I don't want to do this. And I look at it as just go out, do it, try and enjoy yourself, don't look at a clock, don't do any of that, and kind of just run at a nice steady pace instead of trying to oh shoot, I'm 10 seconds behind where I want to be right now, I gotta speed up. Now it's just like, oh, I ran that mile at that pace, all right, just kind of trying to do that and not think about the fact that I've still got a long way to go. I just try and break it up into sections. I had 18 miles for 3 straight weeks. And so it was just like, all right, 1 hour stretches, because it takes me about an hour to run 6 miles. So, 1 hour stretch. Okay, only 2 more of those hours. All right, only 1 more of those hours. All right, you're almost done. It's just kind of, I think that's the best way to approach it, is to break it up.
Sure. So again, similar to the other things that you've utilized regarding either of weight loss or whatever it may be, is kind of taking that bigger goal and breaking it down into smaller, tangible segments. Okay.
It's like I said earlier, it's so much easier to grasp 6 miles at a time or 12 pounds a month than it is to grasp 184 pounds or 26 miles. It's so much easier to mentally wrap yourself around that and be like, okay, that's attainable right now.
Sure. Well, I mean, just the idea of running a Chicago Marathon, some people spend a long time, and let alone that, just 180 plus pounds ago, that was not feasible.
Walking down the street wasn't feasible.
26 yards was not, especially when your back was so bad. 26 yards was a long
Probably
ways.
Couldn't have made it, no.
Yeah. So this last thing I want to just ask you about is, now that, and again, it hasn't been that long, right? I mean, since you've been doing this, January of 18, really, and so we're talking like a year and a half, or so. But you're already starting to give back. How do you want to give back? How are you giving back? And what's the biggest thing that you want to give back to people?
I just there's different ways I give back. I help, people message me all the time, hey, what can I do? And so I always try and make sure that I message those people back, because I know that if I was in that position, I'd want the help. I was lucky enough to get the help, so anything I can do to just kind of give somebody some tips or some pointers and maybe help them figure out a plateau thing or whatnot, that's one way I do it. Helping coach some of these people through Food for Fuel, and kind of tell them what I've learned and see them go out and do it, and excel at it. We have this guy that we're working with right now. His name's Joshua Jones. He came to us at 507 pounds, and in 2 months he lost 70 pounds, because he's just so, I see a lot of what I did in him, because we were at, this is a good example, we were at a spin class. Spin class isn't comfortable for anyone, but let alone somebody who's 450 pounds. It's hard to sit on that bike for an hour. So he got off the bike, but he didn't stop moving. He walked around the class, he did push-ups on the wall, he kept his high knees, he just kept going to stay active. And I was like, that's the difference between being successful and not being able to do it, is I can't do this, so I'm gonna figure it out and do something else, so that I'm still working. And then my goal is just to really just keep doing that, do anything I can to help people. That's what I want to do now, is I want to help people get from a point that I was at, whether it's mental or physical, give my experiences, be as raw and transparent as I can about myself, to just show them you're not alone in your struggles. I may feel like that. I know when I was at my heaviest, I was nobody gets it, nobody understands truly what I'm going through, nobody really has any clue what I'm feeling. But the more you realize it, and that self-realization thing, you realize that people do, they understand and they know what you're going through and they want to help. So anything I can do to be as helpful as possible.
I think a big part, and that's why I appreciate it, because I follow you on social media, and a big part that I've appreciated regarding what you've been doing is with being transparent, is that when you've struggled with the depression or struggled with not getting the reinforcement externally like you've had in the past, or that you want because of the depression, and you've done something different than you used to. You talk about it now.
Yeah.
And you're reaching out and you're moving, and movement is going to be more important than just lying in it, right? And so that part I think is critically important, because there are going to be difficult times, even as you're making progress. It's going to be difficult times a month out of the marathon, and but if you persevere through it, if you break it down into small things, if you talk about it, someone else has been through it before. Someone can give an encouraging word, or in your case, maybe just talking about it itself may change everything.
And that's kind of like I've met a lot of people throughout this whole journey, and even before I knew a lot of people just from who I was, and like being the funny kid or whatnot, or going away to school. I knew a lot of people, so at this point, I realized if I go out and I share something, two things can happen. If I'm struggling and I share it, two things can happen. One, somebody can see it and be like, hey, I understand, I'm not alone now. I know that somebody who's gone through all this has the same struggles that I have. And so one, they'll feel like, hey, I'm not alone, I can do this. And two, somebody out there might have the answer I'm looking for, right? Somebody might, if I've got, 2,000 Facebook friends per se, just for an example, if I post something, one of those 2,000 people might answer that I need, or the tip that I need. Everybody's got a different perspective on things, and so you never know who's going to be able to help you in what situation. So as long as I'm transparent and I'm telling people my problems, I can get answers. And so it's a lot less, wallowing in self-pity or wallowing in being sad and being like, hey, this is a problem. Does anybody have any tips to fix it? Does anybody have any encouraging words? And I encourage people to do that, because it makes it so much easier than just trying to figure it out yourself. Life's not meant to be done alone. Neither is a journey of mental or physical health.
And I think I think there's an element that's different, right, than being able to express where you're at, and even if you phrase it, I'm now venting about blank, but I think there's something different about that versus the old mindset that you want somebody to change the external part so that internally you feel different. I think there's a difference. There's an element of vulnerability and being transparent is a choice to be able to expose yourself versus wanting someone to move the obstacle for you. That's there. So, Ethan, as we're getting ready to wrap up, if for anybody that may be listening, either they're maybe they're struggling with body image, struggling with health issues, or maybe struggling with something like with depression or mentally, what would you want to leave them with?
Just I know this is going to sound kind of maybe coarse, or kind of maybe not the right answer everyone might be looking for, but you gotta do something about it. You can't just sit there. You gotta take one step at a time, like we've been saying. You gotta take, even if you're gonna take a leap, take the leap, and I don't mean to sound insensitive if that's how I'm coming across, but if you're in a mental funk, you need to do something about it. You can't just sit there. If you're in a bad place with your health physically, you need to do something about it. You can't just sit there. You got to go out and you got to do something. And if you need the help, reach out to me, reach out to a family friend, reach out to family. Somebody there is going to be there to help you, whether you want to accept that or not, because a lot of it is accepting that people do care about you, that people do want to help you. And so I'd say just do something about it, whether it's go for a walk, whether it's try and write down your feelings and express them. Just do something proactive. Don't just sit there. Start
that process. Start moving in that
one step at a
direction.
time.
Ethan, thank you very much for being with us today. I appreciate you being here.
Appreciate
and everything you're doing, and most importantly, sharing your story and sharing your experiences as you've gone along. You still got a lifelong to go. And so and hopefully you'll continue sharing that that with people as you go.
Hope so. Hopefully I can inspire some more people. That's all I'm trying to do.
Nice. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being with us. Ethan Taylor, if you have an opportunity, follow him on social media. He's connected with Food for Fuel and Anytime Fitness, but he has still got each step as he's going on his journey. He's trying to take what he's learned on his path, being able to share with someone who may be in their darkness as well. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.